Здравствуйте, меня зовут Maureen Minielli. Hello, my name is Maureen Minielli, and I'm an Associate Professor of Communication at the City University of New York in New York City. Today I'd like to discuss with you 3 different trends that we are seeing not only here in the United States but globally in terms of online education. Those 3 trends are alternative forms to credentials, student-driven alternative learning formats, and working with students with disabilities. In the United States, there's been a public outcry over the amount of money students are spending in order to achieve a university education. Many students are graduating college, several $1,000s in debt, and they have either no job prospects or they end up taking a job that is below what they have been trained for. So what globally has been occurring as an alternative to the traditional 4-year college degree are these smaller credentials, or we'll call them alternative credentials. They take the form of certificates, badges, which are like little pictures or icons indicating that you have achieved a mastery in a particular subject, micro degrees, or little degrees that focus on one area of specialization. And we're also seeing a trend towards credit-bearing MOOCs. MOOCs are massive open online courses. For example, the courses that you see at Coursera or Khan Academy. Here in the United States, because it costs so much money for students to acquire a college education, some universities are actually taking a look at giving students credit for these classes that they're taking online at these alternative places, so that they have less credits to take at the university and they can graduate within a reasonable amount of time. The benefits to these alternative forms of credentials include being able to obtain career employment instead of part-time employment or employment that is below the level of what they expect to achieve when having a university degree. They can actually achieve and acquire employment that is for their career. Also, it can provide new skills and training for individuals who already are in a career but would like to increase their salary or move to a company to a higher position. It gives them more flexibility and more marketable skills to be hired. Studies have shown, at least here in the United States, that individuals who have a university degree plus some type of additional credential, like a badge or a certificate, earn more money than those that have just a university degree only. And then, as I noted before, these credentials are providing an alternative path to the traditional 4-year degree, where students can acquire some skill and obtain a job that creates a livable wage. What are some of the drawbacks to these alternative form of credentials or alternative form to the 4-year college degree? For me, it suddenly changes the nature of education and the purpose of the university. Are we here to prepare our students for life? Or are we now just becoming individuals where we prepare the students for a career? Here in the States, typically, once you leave college, it's the last time you have the opportunity to receive guidance or shepherding before you go out on your own and you live in your own apartment, you get your job, you start paying your own bills. But it seems now that if we're just teaching basic skills, we're not necessarily providing those life lessons that youngsters need before they go out into the work world. It also makes me wonder if perhaps we are changing this notion of thinking, because a college education is supposed to have students think about issues, about ideas, about concepts, and they should be able to think about it from different ways, from the sciences like biology or chemistry, or from the humanities, for example, literature, poetry, or the study of communication. And it seems to me that if we focus solely on skills, then we are not really, we are providing a disservice to our students, because we're not training them to be able to think on their own or be able to make decisions that are crucial. What is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is moral, what is immoral. The second trend is student-driven alternative learning formats. And you can see the evolution over time. We first started out with computers and laptops, and then the introduction of the smartphone and the tablets. And here in the States, we now have students acquiring their information from these different types of formats. It's no longer the traditional face-to-face, listen to the professor, come to class, come to campus. We're also seeing the instruments that we use to teach change as well. For example, textbooks are now becoming e-books, where students acquire them online instead of purchasing the paper copy. We also have online videos, and it's very interesting to note in the United States that students would prefer to watch a video on YouTube than actually sit, read something, a textbook, instructions, or listen to someone like a professor, because they feel that they can get the same amount of knowledge in a shorter amount of time. They're also becoming much more visual in the sense that sometimes it's difficult to listen or to read, but a visual keeps their attention and helps them in their minds understand a concept better. And then of course with smartphones, we all know about apps or applications and how those are proliferating to help students learn particular materials. The benefits, as we all know, when you're not tethered to the classroom or required to come onto campus, if you can access materials online, then you literally have education anywhere at any time. 24/7, 365 means the education is available at all hours, and the student can decide when they want to study a class, work on materials. They're not required to come to campus during the daytime in the morning to take a class. And one of the things that we keep hearing in the States is that we have got to learn to meet our students to where they are, where we no longer are the source of knowledge or the source of authority, the individuals that they've listened to for information, for their education, but instead we've been transformed to more of like a coach or a mentor or a co-learner, where they teach us and we teach them. But the argument is that if we don't change how we do our pedagogy, how we teach, we are going to lose the students because we are not meeting them where they are at this moment in time. The drawbacks that I see, if students become more visual and they are more willing to watch a video than read, I think we're going to see a decline in literacy and a decline in reading. And I see that already now with my students. They would rather watch a video than read a chapter in a textbook. I find it very ironic that in our day, the internet, having access to the internet was more important, but now it seems that access to an electrical outlet to charge the device is now more important than having internet access, because a lot of places now offer free Wi-Fi or free internet access for the students. And if you're watching the news, you'll see that there have been huge technological advancement. For example, here in the States, they're talking about androids being created to do certain things. And we have robots that go around to parties. They act as waiters or waitresses, and they're carrying cocktails or hors d'oeuvres. And it makes me wonder if at some point in time, are we going to become obsolete? Because if technology is creating humans that are not humans, but they are robots, or we have video games that can create lifelike human likenesses visually on the computer, it's not a far stretch to imagine what a colleague of mine at the Rochester Institute of Technology said about 15 years ago. She said that technology is going to replace the human being, and students most likely are going to be taught by computer-generated professors. Now, I mentioned this to my students in several classes, and they did not like that idea at all. They wanted the human contact. They wanted the human touch. But my argument to them was, if you start out with children who are small, who do not know any different, being raised on a computer-generated professor will be normal to them, will be expected. They won't understand what they're missing with the human contact or the being able to have human interaction because it's not something that they've known about, so they're not going to miss it. The third area I'd like to discuss with you briefly is assisting students with disabilities. This is becoming a very large issue in the United States. Basically what it says is, if you have a student who has a disability in the classroom, then you have to provide accommodations for them so that they can be on equal level or equal par with their abled classmates or peers. So what does this mean? This means that any written document that we create has to have font big enough and also headers, so that when a student reads it through a visual reader, they are able to see the actual document. Or in Microsoft, there's the little magnifying glass where you can make the text larger. That needs to be available to students, so those who are visually impaired can make the text bigger and easier for them to read. It also means that we need to create talking pages for documents. And you see this right now. If you go to media websites, you'll see that they will have auditory speaking about the textual document that they have produced. We are expected to create that as well for our students who might be hearing impaired. We also have to provide textual descriptions of pictures. Again, for those who are visually impaired, they may not be able to see the picture, but if you provide a textual description, then what that does is it allows the students to understand what exactly they are supposed to be seeing. So our philosophy at my university is, regardless of what kind of instruction you are providing, if it's the traditional face-to-face course, if it's hybrid, which means partially online, or if it's a fully online course, if you are using a website or a course management system like Moodle or Blackboard, if you are using technology, whatever you put up there has to be accessible. And our position is that, my university's position is that it is our ethical duty to do this, so that all students, regardless of ability, have the means to demonstrate their knowledge, their intellect, their skill level, and they can pass classes and receive a college degree. So what does this mean for hybrid and online courses? For example, one of the things we need to consider is, when we're transforming our courses, are we going to do a part-time where we meet face-to-face for some days a week and online for a couple of days a week, or is it going to be fully online? Here at my university, we have had fully online courses. We are starting to develop the hybrid portion. Mainly that's because we don't have a lot of classroom space. And then also here in New York, most of our students live below the poverty level. I believe 80% of our students, they come from a family who makes less than $60,000 a year, and they are unable to afford the Metro card in order to ride the train and the bus in order to come to campus. So we have been looking more at the hybrid version, so they don't have to come to campus as much as they do for the traditional face-to-face course. What my position is, having taught online courses here and at previous institution, that if we are expected to make these changes to our courses, we need to go ahead and make sure that they are disability compliant. And that might be a little bit harder for older folks who have received their degrees several years ago or are not used to technology. What's interesting is that the graduate students who are graduating with their doctorates and becoming college professors here in the States, they already know to make their materials disability compliant. So for them, it's no big deal. It's something that they've already been doing. I believe it's our older folks, such as myself, who are going to have a harder time learning not only the technology to do this, but to also transform all the materials that we have from the visual format to the electronic format. And then one of the things I've discovered teaching hybrid and online courses, because of all the devices that students are using, I am suddenly looked upon as their technical support. If they have a problem with their iPad, I'm expected to know why they're not connecting to a document online, whether it be in the CMS or on a website. Or if they're trying to use a specific app, all of a sudden I'm providing the technical support. And that's one of the drawbacks to teaching hybrid online learning. You don't only master the material, the content of the course, but you also have to master the technology as well. My firm belief is that if institutions, such as my university and yours, are desiring hybrid and online courses for whatever reason, then they must provide us with the means in order to do these classes effectively. So what does this mean? They need to provide us with the technology. They need to provide us with programs like Audacity, where we can create voiceovers to PowerPoints. Camtasia does that. Audacity allows you to record your voice, and then you can upload your voice so the student can listen to something as well as read a particular document. They definitely have to provide staff, specialists, for us to be able to transform these courses. We need to have the instructional design specialist. That's the person who is educated and has been taught how to transform face-to-face courses to the online version. And that typically requires changing assignments, changing how you do testing. And for some of us, we never received that education or that kind of training because we received our degree several years ago. And it may take us a little bit longer to do these materials because we have to learn how to use the technology as well as employ it in the classroom. They definitely need to provide us with technological specialists, the ones who are going to be able to help us put all these materials online. I firmly believe that institutions have to compensate the faculty for spending their time on these type of activities. You cannot be teaching 4 classes in the fall term, 5 classes in the spring term, such as myself, and then have the institution expect me to change 2 courses on my own free time without some type of compensation or funding. Typically, it would be nice to receive a grant, as I write about in my paper, and have the luxury of a year to create a course and test it out before you fully launch it, instead of expecting professors to create a course, throw it up online, and teach it within the matter of weeks or months. They also need to, if they cannot provide us with grants to fund the development of the course, then what they need to do is provide release time, which means that instead of teaching 5 classes per term, you teach 4 classes, and you take those extra 3 credit hours or the 3 hours, and you devote that time to developing the particular course. At my institution, they're desiring hybrid and online learning, but we have very minimal staff, we have very minimal access to technology, which means that professors are forced to buy the technology out of their own pocket, as well as learn the technology and then perfect it so that students are able to access whatever they have created. It's becoming, in a sense, a huge burden, because in America, the trend seems to be to ask the faculty to do more with less. Less compensation, less time, less everything, basically. And so I firmly believe that if institutions want us to teach hybrid online courses, they have got to provide us the support, they have got to provide us the time, and they need to compensate us for the time that we use in order to create these courses. So in conclusion, I believe that the more with less has to stop. At some point in time, professors are going to choose to leave the field, or they are going to leave for other positions where they are going to be receiving the support, the compensation, the time that they need. If you have not taught hybrid online courses, you should know that it does require a lot of time to prepare ahead of time. But if you do it well and you have the assistance, then teaching the actual course should not be that very difficult during the actual entire semester. Thank you very much. Спасибо большое. Очень приятно.